at the appointed time. We shall continue carry over from this morning. Well, considering the views of the members on FCR 2021-21 bracket 14, the government is currently updating the document called FCR 2020-21 bracket 14A. It's just that the government will appoint a processing agent for the reimbursement of maternity leave pay scheme. So the government will need to update the ESC bracket 2019-20 bracket 2 in terms of the duties. First, I would like the government confirm that they would like to withdraw the old document and replace it with 14A. Mr. Raislin Lau, in accordance with FCR 26, will withdrawing FCR bracket 2020-21 14, and at the same time will submit the new document called FCR bracket 2020-21 bracket 14A. The new document had updated the proposed duties and responsibility, and we'd like the chairman to accept the notice period. And according to RCR 21 and 22, it exercise my discretion in allowing the administration in a short period of time with submitting new items and allow the government to submit the revised document to facilitate the continued discussion on the establishment proposal. Even it's a new paper, however, we see that the paper is not involved a change of the proposed position and the starting salary. Considering the updated information will allow extra time for discussion. The paper have yet to arrive. Could urge the administration to walk us through the major revisions, please. Secretary. Well, compared to the document submitted on April 2019, the major revisions that reimbursement work will be outsourced to processing agent. Thus, an audit description of the chief labor officer. There is some textual update. Well, they have an A to J functions. There's no change in A. You feel that the amendment bill already and the council stage. Well, upon the passage of the relevant bill, we really need still some subsequent follow-up legal work for the implementation, and we also need to consult our labor advisory board on the advancement of the commencement date. So there's still some work that needs to be done as well. And on the April 30th meeting, the document rather, the A to I included a C, E, and G. And C had mentioned on the reimbursement mechanism, but now you appointed a processing agent to carry out such work, and the tendering and the supervision of the processing agent and setting up the system will replace the original description. And for Part E, before overseeing the ensuring the government's internal review, they would actually overseeing the performance of the processing agent and to ensure the effective implementation, and also deal with the inquiries and complaints. And the original document on point G of launching the publicity campaigns, it will be handled through the processing agent. And for the job description, we also need to oversee the promoting agent on the promotional and outreach activities. As we are outsourcing the reimbursement to the processing agent, so these are the corresponding changes. Well, let's just continue with the questioning. Mr. Wuchiwai. Well, I had a simple point of order. Well, we have yet to see the paper. We heard the secretary describing it. At least we should have a paper table to us before discussing it. If anyone would like to talk with the paper in their hand, well, I would still like to ask who would like to ask without the paper. Well, the paper is just part of it, just for your knowledge. If anyone feel like waiting, we should. I suppose it's on the way. Anyone, Paul Che or Wuchi Wai or Dr. Fernando Chung? Anyone else would like to ask a question anyway? Mr. Tony Che. Thank you, Chairman. Well, just follow on my previous round. Well, the secretary have yet to reply. I'm considering whether I should support the outsourcing costs. But together it's 11.5%, which is 54 million per year. I think the government had done some rough, simple calculation on how to arrive at such figure. I hope that the secretary can furnish us with some supplementary information. If not, I find it hard to support. I think it's just too hasty, as we'll talk about millions a year. Well, for many years to come, and that's the first point. For second point, I'll make a reference of other administrative expenses of similar schemes. For example, well, the subsidy scheme. Which kind of scheme do you make reference to? Can you give me such information? I hope that the secretary can provide answer this time. Even though we don't have yet to see the updated paper. And for the creation of a new post, as you claim there's tendering and a promotion, I believe that from the outset, the workload will be quite substantive. Well, compared to the original plan, I see that there would also time limited. So why is it a permanent position instead of a time limited position? As for the maternity leave, the government have never had a dedicated officer to follow it up. Administration who will take the answer. Secretary. Well, in the paper, well, you mentioned other subsidy scheme. I don't have the name the subsidy scheme from my memory. Well, for example, there's some recent surveys on the subvented social welfare organization in terms of the ratio of administrative expenses versus services. For the smaller agencies, it's about 5 to 6%. Well, the bigger agencies have 6%. What do you mean by big or small? Well, generally speaking, for 5 million subvention or both, we'll call it big. Well, actually, for the big agencies, we about 100 million a year. So overall speaking, of the 169 subvented agencies, the central administration costs about 5 to 8% of the subvention. Well, Chairman, while we're running out of time, I'm hardly convinced. I hope that let's to share finish. I'm just really asking for information. When I asked in the morning on the tendering, I'm asking what are the eligibility for submitting a tender. According to Secretary, you had to finalize that. We've yet to complete drafting for the tender document. I'm asking for the tender document. I'm asking who can be eligible. At least you can have some pre-qualifying applicants. Well, the tender exercise, we need to go through a procedure where we need to draft our specifications and requirements. Our general requirements, for example, their past experience will be relevant. In the morning session, members wonder if there are any candidates in mind. Well, I don't really. Can you imagine that those with audit experience will be more suitable to carry out these outsourced work? With just a personal view. Well, if you haven't had an idea, I found that bizarre. Now that you are applies in haste for funding, how can you have no idea? Well, Chairman, forget it. I think it's irresponsible. But, well, Chairman, not that we don't have the idea. I already asked Mr. Chair that those with auditing experience, I believe they have enough experience to deal with it, vetting and disbursement. Well, please let me continue. Well, the secretary mentioned a big or small agency. At least you have a definition. Well, at least you have a audit experience. Well, suppose. Well, what do you mean by big or small? Well, this is a multi-million project. You're claiming a few million is qualified as small. So is it the big in terms of organization or the amount subvention? So because the subvention is big, so the organization must be big. So how many big organizations do qualify? There was concern. Otherwise, will be perceived as favoring big corporations. Well, Chairman, I must clarify that when we respond to another part of the member's question on the percentage of admin cost ratio, well, the admin expense ratio of organization, when talking about the size of the NGO agencies. As for the second part of your question, was about that whether do you have any potential candidates in mind? Well, we don't really have idea of the size. When we decide on the applicant certification, would have the experience and scale requirements. Well, I'm not too familiar with the tendering process. I believe our FSTB colleague will help us to follow up and set up the criteria and based on our requirements. Well, we definitely require experience because they need to vet applications and disperse amount. If they have an auditing experience, that will be more secure. Just because of this, I'm asking for such information, then may not answer Ed. Well, if they don't know the answer, I hope that they could be careful. Otherwise, they can't really retract what they said. I'm asking for information. I'm asking to explain. We don't really have enough time. I don't want to get in the way of other members. I just want, if you can promise me, I can dig up the information for members' reference. Well, the paper is just arranged. Let's pause for 10 minutes for us to go over it. So we resume at 3:25. Other query. You are just modifying the job and the duties. I see there's interlinked. After you change the job duties, there are other supporting staff as well. Does that mean everything else is not changed? If you have this permanent chief legal officer, and you kind of creating a few positions under them, so for the dedicated office, so I just want to confirm that there's nothing else has changed, and just the job duty specifications. I already announced suspension. So okay, so let's go through it in 10 minutes.